Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
So Peter, we were just talking about the standing out video that I put on TikTok the other day.
Yep.
And it's been getting some great traction. It's actually an older video that we put out again, and people have been loving it.
Not as good as the 99%, 1% video, but it got some traction.
Yeah, that's the home run hit. Yeah. But you were saying you were getting some personal interactions from that though, right?
So you put out the video. Yeah. I talk about that one of my favorite ways to stand out is to write handwritten notes, send oversized bouquets of flowers, personalized, curated gifts. Well, since you put that video up, in the past week, I've gotten gifts from all over the country, from people far and wide that I don't know, some people that I do know. I've gotten a lot of text messages from people.
Like physical gifts?
Yeah, so one guy sent me a cooking set with some hot sauce and some salt and pepper mix and a cool kitchen utensils and a frying pan. Another person sent me some t-shirts. Another person said they were going to send me flowers. I haven't gotten them yet. I had a girlfriend from high school reach out to me and say, I love flowers. Send me my flowers, Peter. So she saw it and felt the need to remind me that she was still waiting for her flowers from a million years ago.
Yeah. That's so wild.
And so I thank everybody. Thank you for your gifts. I know you now. I remember you. I won't forget it. And the next time we speak, we'll have a funny thing to talk about. And for those of you who I don't know and we've never spoken, if and when we ever do speak, I'm immediately going to be able to pin you to the gift that you sent me from out of nowhere. And I'll be like, oh yeah, the cooking set guy. That was awesome. What made you send me a cooking set? Where did you get that stuff? Where did you source it from? Have you sent it to other people? I'm not really a chef. Why did you choose to send that to me? Like, we're going to have all sorts of stuff to talk about now. Brilliant, right? I mean, I just think it's a great conversation starter. I applaud you. I thank you all for doing that. What can I say? I mean, it was a lot of fun.
It's nice. Yeah, they're taking the advice immediately putting into use. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I got some notes from people that want to invest in real estate. They say, hey, can you send me deals that you pass on? Or hey, can I invest with you? Or would you invest with me? I received maybe a dozen or 15 handwritten notes from people. After they introduced themselves, they got to the crux of it and they wanted to have some sort of alliance or connection with me. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that's so great. Fantastic.
So it works.
Yeah,
people, I'm telling you, it works.
Yeah.
Do that stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you want to follow up on that lumber conversation we were having last week? It seems to...
We can. There's some data that's out last night, actually, that talks about how lumber's up 250% in the trailing 12-month period, so April to April of 2021. 250%. And so that's $1,200 per 1,000 board feet. So if you're out in the market and you're a buyer for a new construction home, you can expect the price of that new construction home to now be about $40,000 more than it would have been a year ago, forgetting all the other market conditions that could affect the price, but just based on the lumber input itself, $40,000 more for the same product. People who are consuming housing product, which is everybody, if you're renting, if you're buying, it's going to translate to the consumer. So if you're a renter and you're going into new rental product, that lumber package made the cost to construct that building a lot more expensive for the developer. It's going to reflect in the asking rents. If you're a commercial tenant building out a space for a new store or business, your lumber package is going to be 250% more than what it was last year. And I can tell you that in some markets, it's more than 250%. Around here, it's 300 to 400%. The 250% increase data point represents data that came from Weyerhaeuser, who is a big international lumber conglomerate. But if you look at market by market data, you'll see that in the denser marketplaces where there is a lot of price creep anyway, materials like lumber have gone up more than 250%. And lumber's not the only thing that's gone up. We've seen the price of appliances, kitchens, countertops, all this stuff because the supply chain is constrained, because delivery of the materials is inhibited in a lot of cases, and because sourcing materials that have to come from overseas is a pain in the ass and difficult, and shipping containers are falling off the boats into the ocean. Now, lumber, we get a lot of lumber domestically, but there's lumber that comes in from Canada, there's lumber that comes up from Mexico, there's lumber that comes in from Scandinavia. So you have to look at where all this stuff is coming from.
Yeah, and it seems to be the demand, even for lumber that was acquired cheaply, say from southern U.S., the demand is so high that it still is skyrocketing prices.
It's crazy, and you want to know what the flip side of this coin is? Because I saw a great video this morning about it, and so I'll tie it into this discussion, is that the first 3D printed home was sold.
This year?
This week.
Oh,
the
wow.
first 3D printed home was sold. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with 3D printing for construction, check it out. Go to YouTube and check it out. But you're going to see that machines get placed in specific locations within the building envelope on the lot. And then the robot will start to frame out a foundation and walls and roof made of concrete. And it looks like when you go to Dairy Queen and get soft serve ice cream, that's what it looks like. It's sort of swervy and squiggly, and it's soft at first, and then it dries into a hardened structure. And then once it's dry, you go in and do your interior finishes and fit out. And it's an amazing technology, and it's a fraction of the cost of framing out with lumber or any other material. And this is an incredible technology. We talk about things that are the future and what to invest in. As someone who's in the construction business, I can tell you that I'm definitely interested in a lower cost solution to build and renovate and construct if there's one available. So if I can 3D print a building or a home instead of frame it out and deal with these lumber costs, I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's exciting. Do you think there's any light at the end of the tunnel here, or do you think this is going to go on for the foreseeable future?
You know, George, it's pretty rare where prices hit new plateaus and then retreat back. The industry surrounding the harvesting and supply of lumber to the marketplace is a pretty established industry, and it's controlled by a few major players. So now that new prices are established, I think it's going to be tough for them to roll back pricing charts on their products, not just for lumber, but for our daily lives, the goods and items that we consume every day. I think prices are going to go up. I think there's going to be some inflation. The Fed's going to try and fight inflation by buying treasuries and keeping interest rates artificially low. I use the word artificially for a reason. Yep. We're at a new time in life where consumer behaviors that usually happen and evolve over the course of decades were squished into a 12-month period. And the world is taking this into account. Hey, there's a housing shortage. The lumber industry is saying, you want lumber to build your houses? You got to pay this price. And everybody wants to build everywhere because that's how you're going to fix the housing shortage. You got to build your way out of it. There's a lot of demand for lumber right now. The lumber guys are saying, pay up. And that, they should. That's the way a free market works. But be careful, because if you overspend on your build and you pay up too much on not just lumber, but on everything, you're going to end up with a product that's going to be priced out of the market for where the consumer's threshold is.
You mentioned the new normal, and now as pandemic is, we're seeing a lot of rebound in various markets now with vaccinations rolling out.
A little bit, starting to happen.
Yeah. And multifamily outside of densely populated urban areas never really got hit as hard as other industries, depending upon the market.
Not only did they not get hit, but they flourished outside of the urban areas.
But office and retail continue to languish. They continue to struggle.
They do.
Is there any hope there?
There is.
Yeah, speak to that a little bit.
There is, but it's going to be like this. So we've all learned how to work remotely, work from home, and everyone's like, oh, this is cool. I love this. I can sit in my pajamas and have a Zoom meeting. I can be at home. I can take care of my dog. Childcare is now different. Commute's different. I don't spend money on gas. That whole thing, right? But what you miss is that irreplaceable interaction that comes from being with people connected in a space. When I'm managing teams or when I'm managing projects, as great as Zoom is, there's just no replacement or substitute for being gathered around a table, looking at a set of plans, making decisions, having everyone focused on it. A lot of companies are talking about how to get back to the office and are getting back to the office right now. And maybe it's not 5 days a week with 100% of the people there 5 days a week, but maybe it's going to be 3 days a week with 70 or 90% of the people there, and then the other 2 days will be some other shift or version of that populace. But if you're a manager of people, or if you're managing teams, I mean, to have people there together to get instant feedback, I mean, there's nothing like it. You know, it's Zoom. So many funny stories over the past year with Zoom, from the people that were masturbating and never turned their camera off. I don't know if any of that was for real. Like I always watch those stories.
I don't know. I just read about that again. I'm pretty sure that seems legit.
I mean, there was those stories. There's the one person that fell asleep and everyone was yelling at him.
I'm not a cat.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that.
Look, it's funny stuff, but it doesn't advance the ball of your organization down the field at all.
Right.
So I know that those bosses, owners, and managers in those situations would much have preferred to have an in-person meeting. That way they don't have to deal with a falling asleep, vomiting, masturbating person or whatever is on the other end of that camera. It's, the Zoom thing is good for some things some of the times.
Do you think that there'll be a contraction in office, but that it's still...
Well, there will. Not everybody's going to use the same amount of office space. So there's going to be some...
kind of a reordering of things.
Well, there has to be. Yeah. There has to be. I know that I wouldn't want to own office space in Midtown Manhattan right now.
Right.
That stuff was challenged anyway because it was all older buildings and older spaces that were all chopped up and fragmented with low ceilings, that were built all back at a time when law firms and accounting firms took huge swaths of space in these buildings. But that's not the deal anymore. And instead of needing 300,000 square feet, maybe they'll need 100,000 square feet. So now what do you do with the other 200,000? But look, there's also new businesses that exist today that didn't exist 13 months ago. They're going to need retail space, office space. Where they're going to need it, what amenities they're going to need, what sizes, styles, layouts, and footprints they're going to need, that's going to be the devil in the details. That's all going to have to pan out. But there was an interview that Sam Zell gave recently, who is just one of the most influential people in real estate in our country over the past 50 years. Sam feels strongly that office will come back in a new form, but it'll come back. Look, space is space, location is location. If you have great space in a great location, at some point you'll have your day. There's going to be someone that's going to need to use your space. Whether they use it the same way it was used before the pandemic, we'll see. I don't think so in many cases, but there's going to be a need for great spaces in great locations. And if you own that stuff, you got to ride it out. Be careful. I wouldn't be a seller of it right now, because why do you want to sell at the low? But hopefully you can ride it out. See if you can pivot your space to cater to the new breed of businesses that are coming up. I mean, there's a whole new industry with cryptocurrencies, DeFi, banking. Maybe these people need office space. Are you in a location where they're going to need it? If you are, start courting those tenants. There's a whole new industry of freelancers, of internet entrepreneurs, of social media entrepreneurs. Maybe you can cater to them. But you'll figure that out. Everyone's got to figure it out for sure. But look, multifamily is simple. People just need to rent apartments.
So we talk a lot about long-term view and how important that is.
Well, nothing in real estate happens overnight, so that's true.
Yeah. When you buy a building, how far out are you looking?
I have an infinite time horizon because I'm not a seller.
An infinite, wow.
Infinite. When I buy a building, I look at the metrics that are in place today. I'm concerned primarily with the cash flow, the cap rate, the price per unit, the price per square foot, the price per door, all of those types of things. And then I'm looking at where market rents are at other similar types of properties in my area. And if I can grow rents in this building to be comparable with the comp set in the marketplace by adding value, by renovating, by adding services or amenities. As long as the building's cash flowing day one, and there's a few examples that I'll buy even if it's not cash flowing day one, I'll get to that in a second. But as long as the building's cash flowing day one, I'm happy with it. And I know that I could achieve growth of rents and growth of income and expenses over time. That's really all I'm looking for. But I'm not a seller, so I don't need to achieve a certain result by a certain time because my fund is winding down or because I need to sell it and deliver money back to my investors. That's not my business model. That's the business model of a lot of people out there. people that invest with me and my own money when I invest, it's long-term money. We're not looking to sell in 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years or 5 to 10 years, which is what everybody else in the investment marketplace, they have that time-sensitive horizon. They need to achieve a result that's specific by a certain point in time. Not me. I want cash flow. I want to own real assets. I want to have an opportunity to add value. I'm not a seller. The biggest things I'm looking for, though, in-place cash flow. I mean, today you're going to get 4, 5, 6%. I'm looking for a delta to the mark to market. So what's the difference between the cash flow that's there now to the cash flow that can be there once I renovate and add value and achieve my business plan? So that delta of the mark to market is a big one for me. Sometimes I'll overpay if there's a big delta. If there's a smaller delta, it means I'll be more constrained and I won't want to overpay. And really that leaves me to then just focus on the financing markets and make sure that I can get the appropriate debt piece that's sized and priced correctly for this particular project. So if it's a mature asset, rents are already at market, there's not a whole lot of room for me to add value and grow rents, I'm probably going to go lower loan to value, lower interest rate, longer term, and try and max out my non-exposure to the financing markets for a longer term because I can't really grow the rents. Conversely, if rents are very low and the building's falling apart, it's a piece of shit, or it's half vacant, or if it's fully vacant, see, here's the example that I was going to get to. Sometimes I'll just look at a shell and I'll accept to buy a vacant shell because I can quickly get the units renovated, the hallways renovated, new roof, boiler, electric, plumbing, all that stuff done, and then have in place cash flow and rents after I get through, 6 or 8 months of renovations. So in those situations where the rents are very low and the building's just falling apart, piece of crap, lots of deferred maintenance, I'm going to accept a lower cash flow day one. I'm also going to accept that I have to fund my business plan. I have to invest CapEx money to force the appreciation and get the rents up to a higher level and mark to market. But I know that I'm not going to sell, so I'm going to make the investment. I'm going to have a low maintenance asset for the next 50 years. I'm going to hold these assets forever. My investors and myself, we're going to get dividends and distributions from these assets forever. Our kids are going to get money from these things forever. This is how it works. This is why we do what we do. It doesn't go away. And if you're lucky to operate in a great market where there's supply constraint, where there's a high amount of demand, where the price to build something to compete is very high, so maybe there's not a whole lot of new construction that comes online, you can have these assets for generations. I mean, it's amazing.
What are some questions that inexperienced buyers don't know to ask or overlook when they're considering purchase of a property?
Good question. I don't know what the inexperienced people out there are doing or not doing. Here's what I do, and if you're not doing it, you should. So I'm looking at my in-place metrics. I want to know what the cap rate is, what the rent roll is, what the expenses are, net operating income, price per square foot, price per unit, replacement value. I need to know all of those things. And if you're not pursuing the answer to all of those questions, you need to be. I want to know what my lending environment is and what the standard suite of terms are from the various lenders in the marketplace. You have to know that always. I want to know what my mark to market is. I want to know where I'm going to go with rents once I renovate, once I landscape, once I change the hallways up or add that parking lot that isn't there now. If it's an existing asset that's occupied, I want to know what deferred maintenance exists. I want to know what the planned CapEx is that my seller never got to or was too lazy or cheap to pay for. What's that list? And if he's not going to tell me, 99% of the time he's not, I'm going to have to go in and find it out myself. Now, either I'm going to be good enough and experienced enough, like I am, to walk through a building and see what's needed in terms of roof, foundation, plumbing, walls, electric. I also will hire an engineering firm to come in and give me a physical needs assessment. They'll do an even more thorough look. They'll get up on the roof and look. They'll get down in the basement and crawl into pipes and look up in attics and find stuff that I don't have the time or bandwidth to go look for myself anymore. I mean, I can sniff out about 70 or 80% of it, but that report, along with my own internal due diligence that I perform myself at a building, I'm going to find out a lot.
Covers a lot of the bases.
Yeah, I would hire a plumber to come in and stick a camera into the sewage system and see if the drain lines are cracked. Because underground, you've got these drain lines, and if it's an old construction situation, typically they're cast iron drain lines. And those things, they crush, they degrade, they rust out. And so you might have drain lines that are underground that have been there for 50, 80, 100 years that are just cracked and gone. Tree roots can grow inside those things. So if you stick a camera down there, you're going to find out what deficiencies exist underground that you could never know with your eyes. That's why you have to use the camera. I would spend that money. I would have an electrician come in and look at the panel in the basement, the main panel for the building, and assess the amount of service that's coming into the building from the sidewalk. I would go look at the panels in all of the apartments and make sure they're appropriately sized. And a lot of buildings that I buy, I have to upgrade the electrical service because the service that's coming in off the street, being provided by the electric company, isn't adequate enough. It's the same as it was 60 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And residents in apartments now don't use 40 amps of electricity in an apartment anymore. Minimum today is 100. So I'm trying to get 100 amps of service into the panels in each of the apartments. So maybe I have to put in new panels, run new home runs from the panel in the apartment to the main feeder in the basement. I have to bring in new service from the street. I mean, all this stuff you got to know. If you're buying a single family house, chances are it's got adequate electric. But if you're buying a multifamily building and it's an old and dated one, check the electric service, check the systems, perform your due diligence, know your building, get under the rocks and look and see what's growing there. I mean, you're going to find stuff. I would walk through every apartment. When I go to buy buildings, I want to walk through and see every apartment. My seller is going to be like, oh yeah, I sent out notices. There's 5 people in a 100-unit building that are home and they'll let us in. I'll show you the 5 units. And he shows me 5 units and they all look great. The other 95 that I didn't see, what about those? How many hoarders do you have? How many problems do you have? How many roof leaks that never got repaired is he not showing you? How many broken appliances with shit all over the place is he not taking you to see because he showed you 5 units that look way better? My whole portfolio, all of my units are in great shape. They're all recently renovated. We overstaff our maintenance and housekeeping staff, and we take care of emergencies and repairs and things that come up very, very quickly. So there's never any deficiencies in my product. So if someone wants to walk through my buildings, they can see all 100 units in a 100-unit building, and they're going to be impressed with 100% of the 100 units. But I can tell you that if one of these lazy, cheap, historical, generational owners of a building is going to bring me through, I expect them to only show me the best units that don't stink, that don't have bugs, that don't have visual problems. I mean, it's only natural. So I would get into all the units for sure.
You've mentioned off-market real estate before. What do you mean when you talk about that?
If something's on the market, it's available for sale. It's widely known that it's available for sale. It's likely listed in either the MLS service, if it's a residential project, and a lot of even commercial projects are listed in MLS. But if it's commercial, it could be on one of the other websites. But if it's listed with a broker for sale, then it's on the market. Sometimes you'll see signs that say for sale by owner, brokers protected. That's on the market. Sometimes you'll see signs in a lawn that says for sale by owner. It's on the market. It's not getting a lot of distribution under the market because there's just a lawn sign that says for sale by owner. But I promise you this, once 1 or 2 brokers see that lawn sign, they're going to start calling around, and within a day or two, everyone on the planet's going to know that that house or property is available for sale. So off-market means none of that stuff. Off-market means there's an owner of a property, they're thinking about selling it, or they've committed to the idea of selling it. No one knows about it. Maybe you know about it. Maybe the guy down the street knows about it. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's a couple of other people that know about it, but it's not on the market. On the market means it's addressing the large, significant people in the market. Off-market means it's not. And I love off-market opportunities because perhaps the owner, who's the seller of that property, knows what they want to get for it, and they don't want to pay a brokerage commission. And maybe I have access to them and I can work out a deal to pay them their asking price, and I can save the brokerage commission. Or I can have access to negotiating with my seller without there being a broker to muddy the waters, because a lot of times these guys will take a deal away from me and bring it to someone else, or they'll take a deal away from you and bring it to me. So things that are off market provide the parties a really stable opportunity to have negotiations and discussions and enter into a contract. I value that. So I love off-market opportunities, and you hear people talking about that. I want to buy things off-market, let's do it off-market. Well, sure, that means that you're insulating yourself from potential competition and competing bids, And sure, it means that you have access to your seller and you'll have a clearer path to getting contract terms drawn up. That's why I like it. But look, if you're a seller, consider selling properties off market, because brokerage commissions today are anywhere from 3 to 5%. In the commercial world, they're 5%. If you're selling a $10 million property, that's $500,000. So you can immediately call up the 3, 4, 6 biggest players in your market for your asset type, avoid the brokerage community, avoid the multiple listing service, and avoid paying a commission, and you'll get a sale done. I spent the earlier part of my career knocking on doors and calling property owners and saying, hey, I'm Peter, will you sell me your property? And sometimes they said yes, or sometimes they said maybe. And then when they said maybe, I had to stick to them like glue and drive them. George, the building that we're sitting in right now, bless her heart, she was 90 years old at the time. I had to drive her to her doctor's appointments. I had to drive her to pick up her groceries. I had to take her to the drugstore. Like, I stuck to her like glue for like 8 months. I'm like, I got to buy that building. I don't know who else is in her ear calling her, but I don't see anybody, and I'm just going to stalk her, sort of. And I did. And we became friends, and she sold me the building. Her name was Gisela Beck. It was an incredible story. I had to drive her to get groceries and do errands with her for months.
Yeah, that sounds like a song, Gisela Beck.
Yeah, well, it was a... I wish I bought it for a song. I didn't, but I was able to buy it. The point is I was able to get from sitting on the runway to having launched without any interruptions or any fucking Scud missiles coming in and taking me out along the way. And that's what off-market allows you to do.
What's the difference between recourse and non-recourse loans?
Recourse and non-recourse. Recourse, you're signing personally, and the bank can look to you for a failure to perform or failure to pay. And non-recourse is non-recourse. They can't look to you for failure to perform or pay. And there's different forms of recourse. When I take out a commercial multifamily loan on an apartment building, it's always non-recourse except for the standard carve-outs. And these standard carve-outs are affectionately known as bad guy clauses. So what's a bad actor or bad guy clause? Fraud, misrepresentation, lying, cheating, stealing, all of that stuff. If the bank catches you doing any of that in your non-recourse loan with them, you've now got a recourse loan. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't doctor up your documents, don't give fake bank statements, don't do any of that shit, because you're going to sign a mortgage note that's non-recourse, which is great, and you should take that deal. But if you're a bad actor, you're on the hook personally. So not a lot, but there's some people that unfortunately don't play by the rules, and these banks have to have this language in the note, and I don't blame them. They should have that language. But a non-recourse loan, you're able to get in multifamily 90% of the time. You see recourse in varying degrees on other types of commercial deals: retail strip centers, office buildings, single tenant facilities, pad sites, malls, things like that. Anything really that's not multifamily, you're going to see there's going to be some bit of recourse. Sometimes the bank's going to want full recourse. So the full amount of the loan that they're giving you, you're signing personally for it. In that case, you better hope that the value of your building doesn't go down. You better hope that the income that the building generates doesn't go down. And you better hope that the tenant that's there paying your rent, generating the income, doesn't leave. Because if any one of those three things happens, you're on the hook personally for that loan. Think about it. Crazy idea. But if you're going to borrow $10 million on your $20 million building, you're signing personally on that if it's a full recourse loan. I don't do it, George, but I'm not in that market. I'm in the multifamily market. And in multifamily markets, I can get non-recourse financing. So there's all sorts of ways to skin the cat of recourse. Typically, if there's a lot of risk, they're going to want full recourse from the borrower. And if there's lower risk, maybe there's an opening and an ability for you to negotiate partial recourse. But you have to have these banking relationships. You have to have the experience and knowledge. What's scary is the builders and developers that build from the ground up have to borrow money from the banks for construction loans, full recourse. There's no ways around that. So anytime you want to build a commercial facility, an apartment building, a house, full recourse on the construction piece. Now you have to pay that construction piece back when you sell out, rent up, refinance, and put permanent financing on. Then you can then take out your construction financing. But construction financing is typically short-term, higher price, full recourse. So I've never been attracted to building from the ground up, mainly for that reason. I don't want to sign personally on all this stuff. With multifamily, I can buy an existing asset that's cash flowing day one, and I can, at my own pace and at my own determination, I can add value. I can paint, renovate, roof, landscaping, all the things that we talk about. I can do it when it's good for me and right for me, given the various inputs from the marketplace and the opportunities that may present themselves as the months go on. But I'm way more attracted to owning existing assets that are cash flowing versus building from the ground up, because I don't want to go and sign personally for a full recourse construction loan.
Before we started filming, you had an interaction with signing leases. And
all right, lease tip Monday.
Yeah.
That what you want me to do, George? Lease tip Monday?
Absolutely.
Here we go. Here's your tip for today. When you send out a lease or a renewal to someone and they make handwritten changes and then send it back to you and it's all like marked up with changes and circles and X's and things crossed off, toss it in the trash, start over. Don't ever let another party unilaterally alter or modify your lease form. If they want to say, hey, can you make this change? Or hey, I think this is wrong. Or hey, what about this? They should call you or email you and bring it to your attention. You guys talk about it, say yes or no, or modify it, but you modify it. Don't let them do it by hand and in writing and make chicken scratch out of your nice lease document. It's only a problem. You want your lease documents to be unmodified, unaltered, and unedited by anybody. And if there's a discussion that needs to take place, have the discussion and negotiate whatever it is. We don't really negotiate our lease terms here. It's a standard boilerplate lease form. So when someone moves into our buildings, we parachute in the name, the unit number, the rent, the security deposit, the lease start and lease end date. That's it. Change the signature block, send it out, they sign it. And if they don't sign it and they want to talk about all the various things that they'd like to change, it won't work for us. For commercial leases, it might be different because it's not so standardized and it requires a lot of customization. But renting apartments is very uniform and very standardized. Everybody in the building gets the same lease. Every tenant across the portfolio gets the same lease. That's the document. It's not negotiable. It's not editable. It's not modifiable. So when you send out your lease document and you get it back and there's all this handwriting and editing that occurred, just scrap it and call them up and say, hey, we'd love to have you, but you can't make all those changes. So I'm going to resend you the lease form. Let me know now what was really a problem for you, but I'm going to send you the lease form. You got to sign it as is.
Lease tip Mondays. Love it. All right. And I just want to finish out with talking about excuses. What are common excuses? Yeah, I know. So what are common excuses that you hear from people that say they're interested in investing in real estate, but don't go through with it?
I don't have access. I don't have the money. I don't have the experience. I don't know what I'm doing. How do you find the deals? How do you raise all the money? Who do I go to for a lender, right? All that stuff.
Right. How do you transition from that to taking responsibility?
Well, you either get the experience or you have to find someone to invest with. All of my investors aren't in the real estate business, but they want to have access to being invested in real estate. So my relationships are comprised of people like that who are seeking to use me to have access to real estate. A lot of people want to do it on their own, and they don't want to invest with a Peter Siegel. So in that case, they have to go out and find their own deals and underwrite their own metrics and seek their own loans and get approved and negotiate their own contracts and the whole suite of stuff. I mean, it's very difficult. It's a full-time job. It's a whole industry. I dedicate my life to this 18 hours a day. So if you don't dedicate your life to it, and if you don't have the skill set, you either have to obtain the skill set, which if you're younger, it's easier. There's a wealth of information and knowledge that's out there. Even on this channel, George, we're here talking about tips and suggestions and topics that are supportive of being an entrepreneur and going out and finding your own path and creating your own businesses and investing in real estate. So you can find that information. You got to get some experience. You got to get some traction. Look, if you want to commit your life to this, you got to go be an expert in all this stuff. No two ways about it. So if this is what you're going to do with your life, go become an expert in construction. Go become an expert in legal matters. Go become an expert in housing policy. Go become an expert in team management and leadership. Go become an expert in all these things, because you're going to need to be if you want to be in this business. Otherwise, you have to find a way to invest without putting in all that time and effort to become an expert. So that's why I'm here. That's why things like Happiness, the app, is there for people to have access to being able to invest in real estate where they don't have the time, ability, or skill set themselves. But if people say they want to do it, look, people in life say they want to do a lot of things. The idea of it is so romantic, it's so appealing, it's so attractive. But then tomorrow when they wake up, they're just repeating the same old bullshit habits and unmotivated life that they were living yesterday. So if you really want to do anything with your life, not just real estate investing, but anything, you have to get off your fucking ass and go do it.
In order to have a change, you got to change.
Well, yeah.
All right, and I got 2 Zest quests for you to finish
Please.
out, Peter. First one is, I know you're a fan of visual art. We've talked about the murals with, the apartment buildings and all that.
I think it's very important for society and for us as humanity. The arts are so important. It teaches us how to think differently, how to view the world differently. It inspires us. We get culture from art. Our behaviors are inspired by art. So I can't say enough about art and its role in
Yeah,
our
so
lives.
I was curious, what are like 1 to 3 visual artists that really stand out to you, either recently or over time?
My 3 visual artists, I would say Mark Rothko,
Classic.
Alberto Giacometti, the sculptor, and Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect.
Giacometti is the one with like the skinny sculpture.
Yep,
like
tall, skinny bronze
Yeah, those are
sculptures.
cool.
Love that guy. Love that work.
It's funny when I said classic, it's ironic that Rothko is now classic because at the time everyone
He's
thought it was
inspired
so-
a lot of artists. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that do his sort of thing with the colors and the shading and the large blocks of colors.
But that was like really radical at the time, and now you look back and say, oh well, that's like a bastion of classic art.
My favorite Mark Rothko is the one where it looks like it's a blank white canvas, but it's actually a white canvas painted white.
Yeah.
Love that.
I actually have a picture way back at like the beginning of my Instagram. It's me in a white shirt at the Met in front of that painting with my eyes closed, and it's just white on white.
Oh,
white,
so
yeah.
deep, George.
I was an art student.
Can I see that picture one day?
We can put it in the show notes.
Wow. I don't think I'll ever be able to recover from that. That is so... That's amazing.
Real Dada shit.
Yeah.
And Frank Lloyd Wright. Yeah, that's awesome. I dig that. Cool.
Yeah.
And then last question. What's your favorite way to admit that you're wrong?
I just admit it. I just apologize and admit. Knowing that you're wrong is where the real problem is. Admitting it isn't the problem, but knowing when you're wrong and then copping to it, regardless of how you do it, I think is something we all need to do a little bit. But I'm wrong all the time, and I will tell people I was wrong.
Yeah.
To me, I don't care who's wrong and who's right. I just want the best idea. If it's in business for the company, I just want the best thing for the company. I don't care if it's your idea or my idea or whatever the politics of establishing whose idea it is. I could care less about that. We're all here driving the ship towards the same goal. So if it's in business, I don't care whose idea it is, and I'll say I'm wrong all the time. The harder thing is personally with relationships, significant others.
Yeah.
How often do we admit that we're wrong at home?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to work on that a little bit.
Yeah, and often I think the impulse is to feel like when we admit we're wrong, then the person thinks less of us. But it's the opposite. That almost always, if you admit you're wrong, the person then respects you more for being able to do that. But it's an interesting thing.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, well, thank you, Peter. Have a great week.